Biliyor musun? Erken rezervasyon başladı. Yazın en renkli fırsatları Cyprusparadise.com'da. %40, %50 hatta %60'a varan kaçırılmaz indirimler. Erken rezervasyon yap, uçak bileti fiyatına paket tatili al. Uygun fiyata Kıbrıs tatilinin adresi Cyprusparadise.com. Zaman akıp gitmeden acele edin. Bir bakmışsınız yaz gelmiş. Cyprus Paradise. Tatiliniz bizimle güvende.
Kalitenin, güvenin, hızlı teslimatın adresi Ancon Furniture. Ancon Furniture ailesi olarak yeni ürünler ile hizmete devam etmekteyiz. Yeni model koltuk takımlarımız, yatak mekanizmaları bir dokunuş ile açılıp bir dokunuş ile kapanabilmektedir. Bir dokunuş ile açtığımız yatak mekanizmasının yatak çarşafı kullanıma hazır, serili olarak içinden çıkmaktadır. Yıl sonuna kadar herhangi bir koltuk takımı alan her müşterimize akıllı sehpa hediyemizdir. En iyi ürün, en iyi fiyat. Sadece Ancon Furniture'da. Bize uğramadan karar vermeyin. En iyisini biz yapana kadar daha iyisi yok.
Welcome to the latest printed press. I'm Aysen Djemal, and tonight we're discussing a very important subject, the campaign to support the Tottenham Park Cemetery Action Group, which is also known as the TPCAG. They have been attempting to make urgent representation with the relevant politicians in respect of the appalling conditions and practices at the Tottenham Park Cemetery. And I'm very pleased and happy to have Fevzi Hussein with us tonight, Chair of the Tottenham Park Cemetery Action Group and community activist. Welcome, Fevzi Bey, to the programme. I'm very happy to have you with us. We also have Baroness Meral, member of the House of Lords, Liberal Democrat Equalities spokesperson. Welcome, Meral, to the programme. Thank you very much for supporting this cause, very important to our community. And we also have Erim Metto with us, the CEO of the Turkish Cypriot Community Association. Welcome, Erim, again to the programme. And for supporting this as the TCCA. First of all, what I'd like is for everybody just to introduce themselves, just to give a backdrop to this. So if we could start first of all with Fevzi, if you could just tell the audiences a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, hi, Aysen. Firstly, thanks to Erim and yourselves for allowing us this important platform to raise what we believe is a really important community issue. My name's Fevzi. I'm the chair of our action group. I've got a background as working in the community. I'm employed working for a trade union, one of the largest trade unions in the country, Communication Workers Union. I'm passionate about equality issues, hence why I got involved in this campaign. My son's buried in in the cemetery. So, which is, we've got a common interest, every member of the campaign. So.
Yes, definitely. Yes, I think we all do as a community. My grandfather is also buried there, so it's very personal to me too. Baroness Meral Hussein, thank you very much again for coming on my programme. If you could just give us a bit of background about yourself. I know you're already very well known to our community, but just for the information of the programme.
Thank you, Aysen, and thank you very much for inviting us on to your programme.
Pleasure.
It's a great opportunity to share all the work we've been doing. It's been a community effort for many years, and even before I got involved in 2017, there were many people who were involved for many years under the Friends of Tottenham Park Cemetery, who physically took care of it. Even though it was a privately run cemetery, they went out and kept it clean, raised money, planted trees, and did all sorts of fantastic work before we came along. And my involvement has been more since 2017, and as a member of the House of Lords, as a parliamentarian, I thought it was important that I could perhaps open doors and reach politicians in a way that members of the community can't always do. So I thought it was important that I should use that to make sure that people in government and local councils could help us and support this very important situation where we find ourselves. I, like many others, like thousands of others, have family there. My parents, my brother, uncles, cousins, all sorts of, we have, extended family buried there. So it's very personal,
Yes.
as Fevzi has said, and yourself,
Yes.
to me personally, as it is to others. And I'm very acutely aware how the community has been very badly let down.
Yes, definitely. So thank you very much. Yes, so we're going to be going into that and how the community can actually support this campaign. Erim, just a quick introduction of who you are as well before we delve into the subject.
Yeah, normally we deal with the COVID pandemic on a weekly basis at this sort of time, but this was an important issue that came about. We was approached by the Friends of the Cemetery group before Christmas. We raised it with our trustees, and we felt that it was time that some of the organisations that represent the community did something about it, rather than just relying on the group to just move forward with it. So we got an agreement from our trustees. We said that as an organisation, we fully back what needs to be done to ensure that the cemetery is in safekeeping, and that people who are deceased and who have been buried at the cemetery are treated with dignity, love and respect. So we thought it was important that we support this initiative. I as well have family which have been buried, and I think that goes across all Turkish Cypriots that live in London. They have someone somewhere along the line, a mother, a father, a son, an aunt, an uncle, somewhere along the line that is buried there. And I think from our community's perspective, we're owed the fact that our deceased need to be treated with the respect that they're due. And I think that's why we as an organisation have bought into this, and we didn't need to be bought into this. We are as part of this, and we want to kind of make things happen to safeguard the cemetery that is a representation of our community.
Yes, definitely. And thank you very much for doing that as the TCCA. Fevzi, just quickly, before we talk about what we can do and what the actual issues are, we're going to be, showing pictures and videos to our audiences so they can see. For those that don't know about the action group, can you give us a bit of background as to why the group formed? Obviously, we've first got a bit of an idea already, but if you could just explain in your own words.
Well, I think it's, as you say, it's been touched on. I mean, there was a Friends of Tottenham Park Cemetery group formed many years ago, prior to the current owners, and the Friends of the Cemetery Park group did some amazing work. They spent a lot of money, hundreds of thousands of pounds were raised from our community, which led to a lot of the kind of some of the limited infrastructure that you see there, but certainly the historic ones like the main path, the issues with the water provision,
Yes.
So and the bins, even the bin collections with the borough, I think was all being funded through charity collections. So I mean, the activity of the charity became kind of, obviously it's hard work, volunteering. It takes up a lot of energy. This is a very emotive subject.
Yes.
And we set up a new action group. It's been probably a good at least 2 years, going on 3 years now, Meral, I would say. And yeah, and you know, we've got a Facebook page which is very active. You
Yes.
know, and this program is going to be, you know, in addition to the other efforts that we're reaching out within our community, is going to hopefully give us that big push that we need to get the Ministry of Justice to begin to do something, so that, you know, Erin touched on it. You know, we still, you know, when people die, you don't forget about them. You know, that still dignity in death is still a big issue. And we have to make sure that the issues that we're going to talk about on this show today are addressed.
Yes, definitely. I mean, we're going to be speaking with Meral about why it's important for the Turkish Cypriots to be more involved. But before we do that, can we show the video? There's a video, and I think at this point, at the beginning of the program, I'd quite like to get our audiences to see some of the issues. So if we have the video up on my technical.
You can't just be chucking stuff down like that. Look, look. It's terrible.
Yeah, that's the video. I mean, the damage is terrible. Raham, I don't know if you'd like to say a few things about that. You know, obviously you've talked about why you actually got involved within this action group, but why do you think it's important for us as Turkish Cypriots to get more involved? And we're going to put up some pictures in a moment as well. But first, a few words from yourself about it.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you there. I just
That's
lost the sound there.
No problem. I can repeat.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
You can hear me?
Obviously, yes. Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
Yes, there you are. Yeah, it just glitched for a moment. That's fine. These things happen. We were just, you know, we watched the video. Can you hear me now? Oh. Okay. While we're waiting, is there any way that we can move on to Erim? Can you tell us why it's so important for the TCCA to be involved in supporting?
Yeah, I think it's not. I think it's not just TPCAG. I think it's all of us as a community and all the organisations that represent the various people in our community. That this is a common thread. It's not one where it's a political debate whether you agree with this side of things or that side of things. This is clear facts. These individuals who have passed expected a level of dignity in death, and it hasn't been given. And the fact is that the people who are left behind to deal with this, who are left to deal with the families and looking after the cemeteries and looking after the graves, the ownership or the management of it needs to deal with how the community expects the bereaved to be looked after and cared for. And if that level of care is not there, then the community has come together to make things happen. Now, the group's done amazing work to this stage, but they need our support to be able to move forward. The power of the pen and the power of people being able to put forward their comments and being able to make representations to their MPs and fellow individuals is extremely important. So therefore, you know, my TCA being involved in this means that we can, as a community, come together, as we have done with the pandemic, as we have come together with other issues, and ensure that the standards of the cemetery are maintained to a high level. I mean, that's why we're involved in it. And I think it's our responsibility, not just TCCA, but all the other. I think there's in the region of maybe 160 Turkish organisations that represent Turkish Cypriots in the UK, ranging from football organisations to schools, and each one of those has a separate voice. And if we put our voices together, then I think things can really happen. And it's been led by an amazing organisation, a group of people who are very professional and who can actually put our views across, but they need our support to be able to do that.
Yes, I mean, we just saw some pictures there, and I'll come back to Meral about the question that I was going to ask, but quickly with to Fevzi, can you sort of tell us the prevalent issues that have affected the cemetery? Because we saw some images there and it just looked appalling to me. Can you just give a description as well, a verbal description as to all the issues that are currently happening?
I think the reoccurring issues, I think the big issues that our community has to be cognizant of when you're dealing with these types of issues is, issues around, the cost, financing a burial. Meral touched on the issue of burial paperwork. We know that there isn't any proper burial paperwork being given, and there's been some reasons given around mapping being taking place. I mean, what your audience are seeing now are bones that
Yes.
that we found around the cemetery. What people will draw their own conclusions on what types of bones they are. I mean, that looks like vertebra to me, part of the spine. But it's so important, Aysen, to have access to your loved ones' graves.
Yes.
And for many people in Tottenham Park Cemetery, it really is difficult unless you're fortunate enough to be literally by one of the main paths. It can be really difficult to get to inside, to the grave of your loved ones. And we've seen many people comment on our Facebook page that
Yes.
you can't go. If you've got mobility issues, you've got no chance.
Yeah.
And there's other issues as well. There's a lot. Some of the pictures there, you see a lot of damaged gravestones and curbs, and you're talking about big slabs of marble, and you wonder how they break, right? And then we've heard, it's not hearsay. You follow the comments on our Facebook page. When people have contacted the cemetery about the damage, they've effectively been told, it's your problem, you pay it yourself. So these are not reasonable situations in our view. Our community, and there's other communities that have got family members buried in that cemetery. We know that there's other community groups watching this program. It's not on. And as a community action group, we are stepping up to challenge this behaviour, and we'd ask the community to step up with us.
Yes. We've got lots of comments coming in, but just before we go into the comments, Meral, if you could just elaborate on that, because I know you were talking about the paperwork, to explain that. That's very important. And also, why is that Turkish Cypriot, our community, need to get involved and how they can? Because I know before the programme you told me about people writing to their MPs. If you could explain that to our audiences, I think that's a very, very important point.
Oh, well, thank you, Aysen. And just to follow on from Fevzi, the problems have been going on for years. This isn't new. However, there's been a change of ownership, so successive changes of ownership haven't improved. We'd hoped things would improve, and we have tried. And I know before, as the charity before, tried to work with the previous owners, and we haven't got very far. The important thing to remember is that the Ministry of Justice ordered an inspection report in December 2018. That inspection report came out in January 2019. And in that report, it said that this cemetery, the history of it, has been open since 1912. It was a pauper's grave. It was for the people outside the City of London. So it's been in continuous use since 1912, over 100 years. And its capacity was supposed to be 6,500 graves. That's the number of plots. And the inspector, who was an expert, estimated that 48,000 bodies are buried there. Wow. And they are buried at least 7.5 deep. So whoever goes there now and says, I insist that my loved one is buried here, please be aware that there are probably 7 bodies beneath that plot. And that's why we think that, and we've seen lots of bones have been found there over the last few years, that when obviously it's dug up, there are bones are coming to the surface. Now, this is, not something we should be encouraging. We've tried to tell people there are many other alternatives. You don't have to go there. but you know, people in our community, they've got love other family members there and they want them to be nearby. I mean, I completely understand that. However,
Yes.
there are much better alternatives. Council-run cemeteries, especially in Enfield, at Lavender Hill. There's South London, Lewisham, East London. There are much better cemeteries where you will get, as you should get, on burial. You get legal documents called a right of burial, usually for 50 years, and it gives you that right. You've got that in documentation, a legal document, when you pay for it and you choose a plot, and then it will be looked after. Here, we know that the newest owner is not giving out right of burial documents, so all you get is a receipt for your money. That doesn't give you any rights at all, technically, in the law, because it's just a receipt. There's no right of burial there. There's no protection. And we've heard all sorts of stories where people have gone there and, you know, said, well, where's the documents? And they've been told, well, we're not giving them out because we're doing a mapping exercise. Well, that's been going on for over 2 years now. So we do recommend that people look elsewhere, much better run cemeteries where, you know, you can go, and as Fevzi said, you can at least walk there, sit on a bench if you like, and pay your respects without having to, you know, risk stumbling over, climbing over other graves, rocks, branches falling down, as you've seen.
Yes.
I myself couldn't visit my mother's grave. I had an operation in the summer last year and I couldn't, you know, on my knee, I couldn't walk. So until I got better, it was too dangerous for me. And I went there just some weeks ago. It was still too dangerous because it's thick mud, slippery mud everywhere. There are no decent paths. They're buried in pathways. Every single inch is, you know, they've tried to find a spot to bury, even in pathways. So it's become impossible to walk around unless you jump over or tread on other graves and others, you know, other rocks and slabs of marble. It's not safe. And if you've got an elderly relative, you know, who needs to use a walking frame or a walking stick, it's very dangerous. It means that they can never visit their family members. So it's really sad and it's a tragedy. And it's something that we've been documenting. So I would ask people to if they're on Facebook, to go to our Facebook page, TPC Montague Road, find it, join, and you'll get regular updates on there.
Yeah, we've got a few people who've asked that question actually, but we'll go into the questions.
Hopefully we can post that so people can join and they can get the information. The other thing I would say is that I, myself and others, you know, a smaller group of people have been lobbying the government, their MPs and the local council. Enfield Council has been brilliant, fantastic there. They've actually written to the Ministry of Justice, they've done inspections there, they've looked at health and safety, they've looked at the trees. These are the only powers they've got. Because it's a private cemetery, they don't have powers to go in and inspect. The only people who've got powers over a private cemetery are the government, Ministry of Justice. Local councils look after their own cemeteries. They've got the statutory responsibility, they can do that, but not private cemeteries. And this is where myself and others are pushing to change the law, to bring these private cemeteries under proper regulation under the local authority so that they can be inspected and regulated, and if necessary, enforcement action can be taken. That's what we're pushing for. And you know, the ministry are looking at it very, very closely now. I mean, they've seen the shocking figures. They've started to get letters from other MPs who have been written to, especially in Enfield and Haringey. The MPs there have been very good and very involved, but we need more people to write to their local MP. We can provide information on how to write that. It's very simple, but to raise this issue, because that MP will then write to the minister, and the more letters they get, the more likely they are to take action. Because, you know, we have a saying in Turkish, don't we? Ağlamayın çocuğunuz süt verilmez, öyle bir şey var.
Yes, definitely.
The squeaky door doesn't get the oil, all the rest of it. That's what we need to push. And we can provide all that information for people. But please, please, please get involved, write to your MP and say, as a community, we demand things to happen. Why are we being ignored when other communities are listened to? It's because we don't make much noise. We're too nice, we're too polite. But frankly, your MP's there to represent you, and this is a scandal. It's a scandal that affects our community, and we've got to really up our game and lobby hard.
Yes, I agree. Thank you very much for supporting us and, you know, forming those connections, because without you, obviously, we wouldn't have gotten this far. And I just can't believe that it's not actually being monitored. I mean, I think government do need to monitor these private cemeteries. I can't believe that there is no law like this in place anyway. It's quite outstanding, like, you know, it astounds me, to be honest with you. So if people
It's an
want
ancient
to,
law. It's the ancient laws of 1865. They haven't been
wow.
upgraded. They have in Scotland, but not England.
Yes, so we need to, obviously, this has to be done. So if
Yeah.
the people in our community want to do it, they log on to Work for You, is that correct? And they can get to find out who their local MP is, and there'll be some sort of template letter, you were saying, before the
I'll
programme.
share the. Hang on, if I can share it, and then you can perhaps put it up there.
Yeah. Okay. We've got a lot
I'll
of
share
questions.
it during. I'll share it during the meeting.
Okay, brilliant. We've got Serkan saying, greetings from Belfast. Gülfidan asked about, please let us know how anyone can get involved in helping the group, volunteering, etc. Fevzi, that question is for you.
Brilliant.
Oh, we can't hear you. Your sound is off.
That's better. Sorry.
That's it. We're back.
With the 10 Zoom meetings a day, you'd think I'd be able to unmute myself. Yeah, Gülfidan, thank you for that question. I think the starting point probably is to engage with us through our Facebook page, because we've got admins who are very sharp and they're great, you know, quick in responding to inquiries. So if you drop us a DM on there, a direct message, then we can, you know, facilitate some contact, because this is an issue that we really need our community to get involved. I don't think there's a single person who hasn't got loved ones buried in that cemetery. And, you know, the point Meral made, you just have to look at, you know, the Ministry of Justice report is available. I think it's a public document. And if you, there was an aerial picture, there was a drone picture taken,
Yes.
and you can see how packed it is. You know, it's not a big cemetery. It's got a capacity of about 6,500, and as Meral said, there's over 7 deep people. That's not our words. That's the Ministry of Justice report. So that, you know, since 1912 when it opened, you know, about 48,000 people are buried in that confined space. And I'll, you know, your listeners, I can't stress enough. My son is buried there, right? I buried my son in 2008, and you do not think in the way I'm thinking now, or you're watching this program, right? You do not think in a logical and rational way when someone dies in your family. I tell you that now. You know, people actually came up to me and said to me, you know, Fevzi, don't go and bury your son there. It's not a cemetery in good condition, but you're kind of in a rush to put them to rest and put them in the ground, and you really don't think about these issues. And with COVID now, there's so many people in our community that are dying. I've heard about 50 odd people have died in the last two weeks or so. So there's going to be a big demand in burial space again. And we want people to think about these questions now. Don't wait until you've got the emotional trauma of having to bury someone and you can't think about these issues at the time, because you won't. Trust me, your head will be somewhere else. So make those informed decisions now and get involved in our campaign, please.
Yes, definitely. I mean, some very emotional words from you, really. Obviously, it's very close to your heart, hence why I think you've been so actively involved. And yes, I think it's a very strong message. And we are getting a lot of interest, obviously, because a lot of people's relatives are buried in this cemetery. And obviously, this is a community issue. Yelis has put, we thought it would be better once it changed ownership, but it seems not, definitely not, after those videos and what we've heard. Metto's put, it will never change until it goes into public ownership. Well, at least if we could have some sort of monitoring of it, then they wouldn't be able to get away with it. Ertanç Bey has said, appalling state of affairs. I thought when the ownership changed, the problems would be slowly resolved. Are funerals still taking place there?
Yes, yes, they are. And the report I referred to back in January 2019 recommended there should be no more burials, only for those in reserve plots, because obviously people have paid for reserve plots. They wanted to be buried next to their loved one. But we've been told, and we've seen it with our own eyes, that at least 50, 60 burials have taken place probably just within the last year. And of course, with COVID, sadly, you know, as Fevzi mentioned, more people have died. So there are new graves all over the place. And the thing that worries us is graves are, like most cemeteries, you'll go and you'll see older graves. You'll see graves from the 1940s, 50s, 60s. You know, and this is a time capsule, really. You know, you'll see Turkish Cypriot villages, people from these different villages who came here and buried there in the 60s, 70s. There are very few graves left now from the 1970s or 60s, very few. They're all mostly from the 1980s onwards. So slowly, it seems that over the years that graves have been replaced. You know, they've been replaced with new graves. And that is a great worry as well, that, you know, how secure are these? I mean, the worry for me is that, you know, once I'm gone, I suppose, what's going to happen to my family's grave? Are they just going to disappear or be resold? I mean, this is a serious issue because graves that were there, we know they're there. We've got the photographic evidence that were there some years ago. They're simply not there anymore.
It's just awful. It's absolutely awful. I mean, it's not only your family's legacy, but it's history, like you were saying. I mean, it needs to be preserved. These are people. And like Fevzi also said, we need to remember, I mean, just because somebody passes away, they're just as important. And, you know, we need to bring, you know, people's dignity and respect needs to, be protected. I mean, we've got a lot of comments, loads of comments. I mean, people are very passionate about this subject. Metis, but yes, they are. Albert in reserve plots and the space he had cleared at the back of the cemetery. Okay, so basically,
seen that. Yes, we've been there.
Alpi, who is also very actively involved in this campaign, but unfortunately, there is still a high demand for burials there from our community. Yes, so she was actually replying back to Ertanç Bey's comment and what Fevzi and Meral was also saying, iterating the fact that obviously our communities still want their loved ones buried there, but I think we need to put a strong message out there that there is no space. And more than likely, if you do have somebody buried there, then it would be a shared grave. Unfortunately, Gülfidan has put, please share the Facebook page for the group. Yes, we're going to be sharing all the links. And I think we just had it on our screen earlier at the bottom of our programme. And we're just sharing it there, Facebook group, TPC, Montague Road Forum. Sanjit has said, such an important issue. All communities must support. Again, Erim's point there about how it's not just about the TCCA supporting this cause, but all the community groups to be supporting it. I think that's very important. Nettie has put, shame that the new owner is only out to make money out of the grief. I mean, it seems to be that way. I mean, unfortunately so. It seems to be a business. And like you were saying, Meral, I think people need to be aware of their rights and the paperwork that is needed once you bury somebody to have that, really. I think it's very, very important.
Yes, it's very important. And, you know, it's not cheap either. We've heard, you know, people tell us that the charges have gone up. They used to be £3,500. Now it's between £6,000 and £8,000. Now there are cheaper options, you know, in other cemeteries. If you want to bury in Enfield or the borough, your own borough that you live in would provide burial space. And if you're a local resident, you'd probably get that much cheaper. And you'd have peace of mind. You'd get the documentation. You'd be well looked after. You know, you'd be able to visit and feel. You know, you'd be able to sit there and reflect and pay your respects, not, you know, take your life in your hands, clambering over slippery pathways, mud. In the summer, one of the things that got me really angry was in 2017. It was a very hot summer, and some months after I'd buried my mother, and I was trying to get to my brother's grave, and I just couldn't physically get there because the weeds were up to my chest, and I had to go and bring my own, equipment, gardening equipment, to chop it all down to get to it. So in the summer it's bad, in the winter it's bad. I mean, whenever we try and talk to the owner, it's, oh well, I'm doing my best, but frankly, it's not good enough as well. Until some burials need to stop, and it needs to be properly regulated, and we're pressing the Ministry of Justice very, very hard on this. Enfield Council, as I've said, has offered, as a local authority, they've offered to take over responsibility for regulating, inspecting, because they've got experts, they've got people who, they run cemeteries, they've got people with the experience and expertise, and they know the cemetery well. It's infamous. It's probably some years ago, we had some publicity on BBC and ITV, and it was dubbed is this the worst cemetery in the country? That was a question posed, and we had journalists coming there who could not believe their eyes as to what they were witnessing. So why should we, as a community, have to put up with this? Why should we be treated with such disrespect? Why should our families be treated this way? It makes me very angry that we deserve better. We deserve to be treated equally, the same as any other community.
100%, I agree with you. And I saw an article as well in The Guardian about a couple of years ago as well. So this campaign has been going on for a very long time.
It has.
And I think our voice needs to be heard. I mean, somebody's actually put there, writing to MPs is the key to push this issue. And we're going to be putting a link
absolutely
at the bottom for Work for You, so that you can click onto that and be able to find out where your local MP is. And we'll also be providing, template letters.
It's up there now.
Oh, there it is. So just type in your postcode to get your MP. We've got lots more questions. Dignity in death is so important. He keeps claiming that he's mapping the cemetery. See, people are actually echoing what you've been saying. This is the thing that's been said by the owner of the cemetery, which isn't good enough, really. Can't be mapping the cemetery for 2 years. And quite frankly, it's your right, really, to have the relevant paperwork. Dignity in death. Hussein Hodja has also put prayer hands. Michaela's put terrible, no dignity for the deceased. The owners need to be held responsible. Appalling. So we just need support, really, from everybody. Abby Hussein has put Kate Osamo is the local Labour Party MP. Anyone who wants to write to. And London Borough of Enfield is run by Labour Party. Yes, thank you for that information. How quickly can this happen, though? I don't know who would like to answer that question. What do we think?
Well, you mean how quickly can this happen? It needs a change in the law. But in the meantime, you need a change in the law. And it's not very difficult. They did it in Scotland. They had a situation in Scotland where somebody working in, I think it was Edinburgh, was reselling plots, and he got arrested and charged for that. And as a result of that, the law was changed. It was exactly the same. It was unregulated. And now all private cemeteries come under local authority remit control. So they have the right to inspect and to regulate as well and take action if necessary. We need to change the law. I've put down questions in Parliament about this, but the wheels of government turn very slow. And as you know, this isn't, it's never going to be a priority for any government, but it's something that they could do very easily. It could take time. It could take months. It could take a year. I don't know. But as long as we're determined to carry on until that happens. But in the meantime, we've offered them a way out. We've said, why not give a local authority in the interim until you can come up with a better, change the law or amend the laws? Why not allow the local authority who are keen to support the community the powers to do this? So they've got that on the table. They've got that on the table. They've got other powers they can use, such as compulsory purchase. There are all sorts of things that they can do. The government have the power to do this. They've done it with other cemeteries around the country. There are examples where they've done this. And I understand that they're now looking at some options. So this is the time to really, step up the campaign when the Ministry of Justice and the civil servants there are actively looking into it. They've seen all these photographs. They've seen that film. They've been sent everything. So this is the time now to up the campaign, and to make them realise that there's probably not a single, I don't know, I can't think. The majority of Turkish Cypriots in this country and in Cyprus, we get people in Cyprus posting on our and abroad posting on our Facebook page saying they've got family there and they're really worried they can't visit. What's happening to my, grandmother's grave? I haven't been able to come because I don't live there anymore. This is the sort of fear people have. But, they all need to get involved. And the Ministry of Justice, a government minister, needs to understand this is a big issue for the community because it affects so many people. It touches on so many people's lives. Even, ministers, MPs in Cyprus have told me that they've got relatives. They were prepared to step in and help with some funding if necessary because, it affects them as well.
Yeah, it affects the whole community. And also, Fevzi's put a comment in our group WhatsApp is that there are World War heroes buried there too. And even their graves aren't there anymore. So it's just terrible. I mean, Alev Chazamola has said Enfield Council is fully supportive and we are happy to work with the group to resolve this unacceptable situation. Proof there that the Enfield Council is supportive. Metto said sensible way forward. More shares of the Facebook group and, people thanking us for the programme. It's just scandalous. Selena, I was told my mum's not even buried there when she is over 30 years. Oh, he lost documents, it says here. So I think, people haven't even got proof that their relatives are buried there.
Can I just say that in any other cemetery, you can go online. You can go, I'm talking about the council-run ones. You can go online, you can put in the name of your deceased member and their date of death, and you should be able to get the plot of where they're buried. There's no such thing on Tottenham Park Cemetery. The website is useless. It's hardly got any information. You could never find, the record keeping is out of date. Most cemeteries, the majority, are required to keep these records. They have, they've got these going back hundreds of years. I'm sure you've all watched the programme, the programme where they all go, who do you think you are? When everyone goes and finds their relatives. Well, you tried doing that in that cemetery before pre-1970. Good luck with that. It's shocking that you can go to any other cemetery and you can find, ancestors of people going back to, hundreds of years. In Enfield, I think in 40 Hall, they've even got a dog cemetery that's in better shape than this one. So I just think it's just shocking that nobody can find, if you lose your papers, basically, say you haven't visited for a long time or you've lived abroad and you come back, and we have this all the time, people asking us, they've lived abroad and they've come back and they're trying to find a grandmother or a relative's grave. It's gone. It's not there anymore because the headstone's probably gone. And they don't know where it is. They go to the owner. He won't know where it is. But as I said, if it was a properly run, regulated cemetery, if you go to one of the Enfield ones or Haringey or Islington or Finchley, any of them, they'll find it for you because the records are kept properly. And that's what I mean by dignity and respect. So our loved ones can be erased. Their graves can be erased after, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, they're gone. Gone forever. One of my cousins had a friend who died in 1999. And he had no one, he didn't have any family, but he said, I'd always go and look after his grave. He'd visit once every 6 months. He went there. He took me there last year. It's gone. Someone else is buried there. He only died in 99. So this is what we are up against. This sort of situation's been going on for years and no one is there to inspect it. We can't. We're volunteers. We can't be there every week inspecting it. We try to keep an eye on it. But this is the situation we find ourselves in. I can't tell you how shocking and upsetting it's been and especially to realise, for me as a Member of Parliament, to find out that this is all perfectly legal, apparently.
This is the thing. I can't believe it either, hearing it, the fact that there's no law to actually protect these graves.
So that's why we need the community. We need the community to do everything they can. Every one letter you write is going to be important to us.
Yusuf has put a good point here. Yusuf Ahmed, we need to call for a community-wide boycott, and this needs to be backed by all key Cypriot communities. Enough is enough. I think so. A boycott of having any more burials there, for sure. I think the message needs to go out there because, for sure, if your relative is buried there, they'll be buried with other people. It will be, a grave with multiple people in there. And as Fevzi pointed out earlier, when you are grieving, you're not thinking straight. You're in a whirlwind of emotions, and it's not the time to make this decision. So obviously, don't wait for it to affect us, because it can do at some point. All of us on this program have relatives buried at this cemetery. So, you know, try and support it through the different ways, by keeping up with the Facebook page, by going into Work for You, finding your local MP, and we've put the links there, and using the template letter, and actually writing to your local MPs, I think, so that we can lobby and try and get the law changed as soon as possible, really, as soon as possible. It's just there on the screens. People have just put OMG, let's all write, sorry, I've lost the comment. Let's all write, that's Metto Hall, let's all write to the MP and get this terrible situation changed. That's it. The more people that do it, the more powerful we become. Yilias at TPC, I'd like to thank you all for all that you do. My heart breaks each time I visit my mother's grave, as it's not as nice as the cemeteries. True, I mean, because we've got other cemeteries in Enfield and they're beautiful. And a small location plan. It's very shameful. All our loved ones deserve so much better. Our post, but we have over 2,000 members just on the Facebook group. If each person from that group wrote to their MPs, it would make a lot of noise and push the action to take place. I mean, that's a very, very good point there. And Alpine, I know, has been actively, because I know her
Chanel. Chanel's been is one of our members, and a fantastic activist as well. So she's made a very strong point.
Very. Abby Hussein's put, what's the law on how long a grave has been preserved?
Do you want me to answer that? No, it's 70. Basically, they'll give you. Normally, we used to get a 50-year, right of burial. But at the end of that, the cemetery owner has to write to the family to notify them the right of burial has come to an end, and they need to renew it. However, they can't exhume that body or reuse it for at least 75 years. So after 75 years, they need to then try and track down the family of this grave and put notices outside, and wait another 6 months. And only then can they should write to the Ministry of Justice and ask for a license to exhume that body and to replace it. You have to ask for permission. Now, I've checked with the EMOJ. Very few licenses have ever been issued to this particular cemetery over the years. So where are they all going? What's happened in the past over many, many years? Where are all these disappearing graves? I think we know the answer to that, but it's shocking. That is the law, though. The law is, as it stands, should not less than 75 years before a grave can be exhumed and somebody else buried there. But it has to be done properly and with permission. Yes. And not many people know that.
So it's illegal activity as far as I'm concerned. It's just appalling.
It's very upsetting.
Very, very upsetting. V. Carter's put, my father was turned there in double plot in 1964. My mother is now in the same plot sometime 10 years ago. I myself am now old and find it impossible to reach their graves, as new burials in front and now on the path. I mean, people are being buried on a path.
Yep, it's all about money, isn't it?
Yeah,
I think Viv Carter's right when we've been in touch before as well. You know, people who've, those graves have been there. There are some who've been there a long time, and because they're well looked after, they've obviously survived because they've known that people come and look after it. It's the ones that become neglected that unfortunately seem to not survive. This has been a sad, sorry situation. But she's perfectly right. I mean, when my mother got quite disabled, it was impossible for her to visit my father's grave or my brother's. It's just physically impossible. It was dangerous. She couldn't do it. So, it was very sad. She was really upset by it. Why shouldn't we be able to visit our loved one's grave? Because you're burying in pathways. I mean, there's someone's right next to where my mother's buried. Somebody else is there, and next to where the pathway was. Now I'm going to have to, when it has the memorial built on it, I'm going to have to stand all over that grave to get to my mother's grave. That's probably why I haven't been able to visit. And I know there's hundreds of people in the same situation. I know Fevzi's had the same problem as well.
It's just awful. V. Castle's also put, it's not only the Cypriot community buried there, and we made that point. It's a very
Yes.
old cemetery, and there's World War heroes even there. And of course, it's not just the Cypriot. It's, it affects other communities also. And Tanjit has put, Fevzi, how can the trade union movement help? Can they?
Well, Taranjit makes a really good point, because the trade unions are getting more involved in community campaigns. And it's probably a good moment to mention the fact that we are trying to work collaboratively and form important alliances, because there's a cemetery in East London called Manor Park Cemetery, and there's another campaign group called the Match Girls Campaign, and that's all about Bryant and May. You'll know that that's a matchstick company. They had this factory in Bow, and there's a really famous trade union activist. Her name's Sarah Chapman, and she's buried in. She's a really famous person in terms of trade union history, and she's buried in Manor Park Cemetery. And our friends, our brothers and sisters in this campaign group, are having the same kinds of issues because of the lack of regulation. And I know that the GMB union have been very supportive, and Barbara Plant, who's the president, is actually a patron of that group. So, we need the trade unions to get involved and support Tottenham Park Cemetery Action Group. Because, Alex Chalk, who's the Minister for Burials in the Ministry of Justice, we've got David Lammy, who's the Shadow Minister of Justice. Everyone has to write to their MPs. You see this, the pen, the power of the pen, right? If an MP gets 50 letters on their desk one morning, if you think they're not going to take notice of that, I'm telling you, that's going to push them into action. It doesn't take a lot. We just need to unite as a community and really push that point. And if we've got the help of, community organisations like TCCA, which is brilliant, and we're working with Conseil as well. This is a broad effort. Everyone has to get involved, and if the trade unions are getting involved as well, and the MPs support us as well, we are going to get things changed in that cemetery, and we will push to make it happen. But you do need to help us. Thanks for that question, Taranjit.
That's okay. Yes, so that's what we need to do, everybody.
Yeah.
This is very, very important.
I come on something.
Yes.
Yeah, so Fevzi is quite articulate put it. This is a situation where we as the community need to get there and make things happen. It's up to us. We can't rely on saying our friend who's kind of going to do it for us or someone else. We need to physically make the effort and contact the MPs, even phone call them, speak to them. We need to make things move forward so that we have the power to make these changes happen. It's not just individuals, it's groups, it's our platforms. We have a myriad of platforms which over the last year due to COVID have grown enormously. Some have over 10,000 participants within those platforms. Those platforms need to extend a message. These videos that are being made or these shows that are being shown, these need to be shared on platforms as well so that more people can see them. Conversation needs to be had so that we can all engage, and it is our responsibility, it is our community, and we have the power to make this change. If we don't support the group itself, the people who are making this massive effort to make things happen, things won't happen. They'll just stay idle. They'll just stay the same status quo will remain. So we need to make this change happen, and it's up to us to do this. And it's not political. There's people involved in the group who are from the Conservative side, from the Labour side, from the Lib Dems. It's everyone. So we all have as a community a responsibility to ensure that the burials that are conducted are treated with dignity, that people are treated with respect, and that we have the rights of every other community to ensure that our people who are deceased within our community have that respect given to them.
Yes, because this is of all our loved ones, and obviously we all pass away at some point, unfortunately. And like Meral was also saying, it's worrying. What happens when we, the people who are connected to our relatives, go? Then what happens to those graves? It needs to be safeguarded in some sort of way. Yusuf has got quite a big point, actually. He said we as a community also need to start to accept responsibility. What we're sort of saying, that we all need to collectively do something. We are funding this and still requesting burials at this cemetery, despite knowing it disrespects the graves of others in our community. We need to educate and do more, for sure. We need to share out this information so as many people can know about it and be informed. and, you know, put the message across. Metis, but I think the previous owner was also guilty regarding the disappearing graves, Meral. So, you know, that's just terrible. And V. Carter's, but it's a disgrace that you have to visit the cemetery hoping that the gravestone has not been knocked or disturbed. I mean, it's just, and we saw the images earlier. I mean, we're coming to the last 5 minutes of our program. I don't know if we can just show some images again of that. I mean, it's just, you know, gravestones being destroyed, human remains being left outside because, you know, people have been buried on top of other people. I mean, it's a disgrace. It's disgraceful. Dennis Gunesh has put, the religious leaders, undertakers should also be briefed not to continuously advertise when someone contacts them about loved ones has passed. I find it disgusting that the imam which organised my mum's funeral kept on insisting she be buried at the TPC. The person is at their lowest and does not know about the TPC. They may accept the suggestion of the imam, especially when he continuously pushes for it. Okay, so that's the point. So we need to, you know, inform our community before we get to the point where we're grieving. Like Fevzi said, you know, and currently during these COVID times, that's going to be happening to a lot of us. Abby Hussein is, but we as a community don't even register to vote. So how can we expect people to get involved in something like this? Well, we need to change that. We need to get involved. Our community has to become more active. We need to be activists in this particular stance. Salim has put, what if you don't live in the borough no more and you can't talk to your own MP? What happens there?
Can I respond to that? I'll respond to that. I agree with all the points as well about taking responsibility. But Selina's point is really important. It doesn't matter if you don't live in the borough. The fact is that if you've got somebody, a loved one or a family member or anyone you know you're close to, you were close to, buried there, and you know you need to visit, you can still write to your MP. You can still say, well, my grandmother, aunt, whoever is buried there. Doesn't matter where you live. They are required to then write to the Ministry of Justice to say, you know, Selina Memzi has written to me about this. What's happening? What are you doing about it? Because then the MP is required then to make representation on your behalf. That's why we elect them. They're your elected representatives. That's why they're in Parliament to represent you on whatever issue that's concerning you. So this is an issue that concerns us, and they have a duty to take it up. And I have to say, MPs like Kate Osamar and Ferial and some of the David Lammy, a few of the MPs have been very good, have taken up, taken this up, written to the minister. In fact, I've been in meetings with where Kate Osamar and Ferial, two of the Enfield MPs, have taken part and have been really, quite vocal about it. So when they know it affects them, because they said they were starting to get letters and emails about it in their mailbox. So it's something that they will take up because it concerns their community, their constituents in the community. That's what it doesn't matter where you live. If you've got a connection in some way, please write to your MP. Please join us and lend your voice. We're going to have a petition coming up very soon, as well. So we're trying all fronts now. We will go full pelt all fronts to get this law change and to get the dignity and respect for our community. I'm not going to stop. I did actually tackle the previous owners. We thought we'd get somewhere with a new owner. Sadly, that's not the case. So now we've turned to the Ministry of Justice to do their job and regulate and do something. And I want to pay tribute to everyone who's really supported us and helped us, particularly the leadership of the leader of Enfield Council. She's been fantastic. Councillor Nesil Çalışkan, she's been wonderful actually, and she's written to the MOJ. She's made representation. She's got officers to, as far as they can go, to look at health and safety. Trees were falling down. Many people will have heard of this. Branches were falling down on their cars because no one was caring. No one was paying contractors to go and trim trees. I mean, that's cost money. Why would they do that? But Enfield Council were very good, and in fact closed the cemetery down for a couple of weeks a few years ago just because it was too dangerous. So they've got powers as far as it goes. They've pushed it, but they can't push it any further. And this is what we are up against as well. Ancient laws that have never been renewed or upgraded in any way. So this is what we're up against. And we're all passionate. We've got a very good team that I'm very privileged to work with. You know, Fevzi, Chanel, Hurrier, Phyllis, Kenan. We've got some and others as well. Very, very strong team who we've been working with together for many years, standing on the shoulders of the people that went before, who worked very, very hard. I want to pay tribute to them as well for all their hard work as well. But as I say, we need your support, and we're not stopping, and we're not going away.
No, definitely not. Tamer was supposed, but I'm sorry, but I just joined the conversation. But where can we get hold of a copy of the sample letters so that I can write to my MP? Also, is it my understanding that we have a few Turkish councillors in Enfield? What are they doing about this problem?
Well, I've just mentioned the leader, who's Turkish Cypriot, and she's the key person who's written to the minister, and they're required to listen to her. So that's key. I think really, on terms of councillors, if you know councillors or if you're a councillor, you've got a better way of communicating with your MP. I think it's the MPs that are the key now. You know, local councils don't have any powers. It's the MPs that we need to target, and the Ministry of Justice as well. Where can we get the letters? Are they going out through the TCCA and the Conseil? Have got letters now ready that they can send to people. I'm not sure. Maybe Erim can tell us how that's going to get copies of those letters out.
What we're going to do is we're going to follow your lead. I mean, we will be sending out letters to all our members to ask them, to encourage them to utilise that as a format to contact their MP. We will be offering our website as a mechanism for holding onto those templates so that the community can access them when they need to. We'll be offering the platform to the group whenever they need it through the various social media platforms that we have. And the fact is that we have a tendency of saying that someone else is going to do it. We need to take responsibility ourselves as community leaders, and we need to take responsibility as ourselves as community representatives to be able to make that happen. So not just relying on other people to do it, we need to say, okay, this is an issue for us and we need to be able to do that. But in response, Meral, we're going to be doing everything that's required, and we'll be offering the platforms. And if people do want to access those, they just need to merely contact us, and we will send out those template letters.
That's great. Thank you very much for that information, Erim. We've got lots of comments. I mean, we're almost at the end of our program. We've actually gone over. I'll just quickly go through the comments and then we'll wrap up. Metto's put, thank you for the broadcast. It is great. It is a great step forward for change. Yelis has put the Facebook group there again. Celine's put, thank you very much for your information. I mean, Hussein's, you know, sort of putting the emojis there of power. Thank you for this question, Meral. I will contact my MP too, as I live out of the borough too. Thank you. Yusuf has put every Turkish newspaper, every online community group, centre, every mosque, every community centre. It's time to boycott and protect the dignity of our loved ones. And Selena's put also, you can't use toilets without paying £40 for a membership. What's that all about?
Fevzi.
I mean,
over to you, Fevzi.
Yeah, it was part of the facilities, you know, that the new ownership came on board with, and you know, I think to be fair, there's been some cosmetic changes to the front in terms of security. There's a new gate there, there's a new office there, and I think the toilets have been done up, but you know, there was a charge. I mean, the ownership's brought in a policy to have an access card that people have to pay £40 to use the toilets. I think it will also give access to the cemetery out of normal opening hours. And yeah, I think some people in our community have paid that, but a lot of people in our community have resisted that because they feel, you know, they've already paid a lot of money to bury their loved ones, and they see the condition of the cemetery and they feel quite, you know, resentful of the fact of giving up another £40 or whatever it is. So, I mean, that's the story behind that, Aysen.
Yeah, I mean, they've put another money spinner for the owner. I mean, it's just really, I mean, when you take something on, it's not just about the money, it's about having integrity and, you know, respect.
There really shouldn't be profit opportunities when you're burying people, right? But you know, we do understand that at the end of the day, it's a private cemetery, And if you know, there are other private cemeteries that are run, you know, very well. So we're not going to kind of beat up
Yes, saying
all
that.
the concepts of private cemeteries, but we're talking about one that's very close and dear to, you know, to our hearts, to our community. And unfortunately, you know, this one is falling below the standard that we would reasonably expect. And Meral kind of makes the point very reasonably, that, you know, we you know, it's about time we started demanding dignity and respect for our community, you know, for our loved ones, for our people that have passed away. It isn't a lot to answer for. You know, the Ministry of Justice report had a number of recommendations, and hardly any of them have been done, and hardly, you know, they've hardly followed up on anything. So, you know, our demands are quite simple. There's already a report in place, and we want the recommendations in that report to be upheld. And that means, even the report was saying that only reserved plots people should go and bury their families where they've already got this arrangement in place. You know, we accept, look, it's a free economy. There's comparison sites. Maybe we need to do a comparison site on our website so people can see the prices, see the conditions of the cemetery in terms of
Yes,
access, you know.
yes, good idea.
And do, you know, you do it for car insurance, for home insurance, you know, for energy, you go to Uswitch. Maybe there should be like a cemetery comparison site, and that is something we are looking at, and we are speaking to certain leading members in our community who deal with you know, burials and stuff, so that we can get a bigger picture on that, and ultimately we just want people to be informed, make the decision that, you know, is not going to make you have regrets. I have regrets that my son is buried in Tottenham Park Cemetery. You know, there's a lot of people that came to that cemetery, and it's really upsetting when I look back now, right? And I think where he's buried, and there's so many people there, and I'm thinking, my God, everyone would have been standing on someone's bloody grave, and it makes me so upset. But you don't think about that. You know, we really have to get into the mindset to make these decisions now, so that we're not having these regrets that, you know, people in our action group are having. Um, this is about raising awareness, right? Raising
Yes,
some really important awareness and getting that outreach and switching on the light bulb in our community, so that you go to your MPs, give them hassle, man. That's what they're there for. That's what they're paid for. Give them grief if they don't do it. You know, make sure the minister at the Ministry of Justice listens to our concerns as a community. Let's all get together and do something about this, please.
definitely. It's a very strong way. Yusuf has said, I applaud Euro Against TV for discussing such an important and sensitive topic. Thanks to Aysen. Thank you, Yusuf, and to the speakers, Fevzi, Meral and Erim, for speaking out on this. Of course, and I, for one, will be signing the petition. Obviously, that was the whole point of this program, is to, you know, give awareness and detail as to this campaign. You know, for the dignity and honour and memory of our loved ones, you know, that are buried at this cemetery. I mean, the law has to pass, and thank you very much to Fevzi for being involved in this group, being the chair, Meral, for, you know, lobbying this, you know, with all the contacts that you have in Parliament. I don't think we would have gotten as far as we have gotten without your support, really. It's great that we have people like yourself in our community, and Erim also with the TCCA, and Erim's point there about it's not just about one community group, but all the community groups can make a huge difference. So not just individuals, all the community groups out there that we regularly have programs with for the COVID, lots of other issues. Please support this campaign. This is a very, very sensitive and important campaign. And like Meral said, why should we tolerate it as a community? Why? When other communities' voices are being heard, my blood boils, really, to be honest with you. As a Turkish Cypriot, we have rights too, and this medieval, I'll say, law needs to be changed immediately. So please, as many people as possible, we'll put all the links at the bottom of our programme to getting contact with your local MPs, template letters will be shared via TCCA and the Conseil and Eurogench as well. We will try and share that. We are going to be getting an online petition going as well. And really, like Yusuf said as well, one of our audience members, boycotting the cemetery and not burying any more of our loved ones, because Fevzi's point rings very true. When you get to that point and you are grieving, you can't think straight, really. You know, you're in a whirlwind of emotions. So please think about it from beforehand. I mean, we've still got quite a few comments. I'll quickly run through it and then we'll have closing statements from everybody. Metto said it comes over, right, so apparently the owner comes over very respectful, but he is a businessman. Metto, great idea, Fevzi. Fevzi's ideas there. Yili, I have regrets that my mother's buried there too. Selena, my condolences to everyone who have lost loved ones here. And Ashkan has put, a comparison site is a good idea. A campaign is needed to boycott use of this cemetery. So a lot of our audience are saying that, so we need to put that message out there as well. But Fevzi, I think very, very good idea there about having some sort of comparison site. I think that's a very good way forward, really, because that way people get informed, don't they, about the decision that they're making. We're going to go around now and we'll have our lasting statements. Thank you very much for coming on to my program and sharing information and your views. It's been wonderful. Thank you very much. It just shows you the power of our community and, like Fevzi said, the power of the pen. Fevzi, what would you like to say?
I think I've said what I wanted to say, to be honest, Aysen. Obviously, thank you to yourselves for giving us the platform to make this plea so that we can raise awareness of this very sad issue. You can see from the engagement from your listeners that it means a lot to our community. And I hope, when this program finishes and you go and have your Turkish coffee and you start talking about the latest COVID statistics, which are depressing as ever, don't forget about this program, because there's our community, people are dying from COVID, and I know 4 people, friends of mine and direct people I know who've died in the last week. So burial space and burial issues is at the forefront of people's thoughts. So don't think you used a good phrase, Aysen, don't be caught up in the whirlwind of emotion. Start thinking about these things now, do your homework, make an informed decision, but get involved with our campaign, please. Thank you to Erim and the TCCA. We won't be able to do what we want to do without the vital support of groups like TCCA. Use those templates, please. Write out to your MP, write out to the Ministry of Justice, and make sure they know that we're not going to sit here and take this anymore.
Definitely. Thank you very much, Fevzi, for coming on and speaking to us. Erim, your lasting words. We close the program. Oh, I can't hear you. That's it.
Yeah, my first words are a big thank you to the group itself for all the work it's done to date. They've never given up. They've always put pressure on the cemetery owners to make changes for the positive, and kept pressure in Parliament, even when the community felt that change had happened and new owners had come in, but no change had happened. The pressure was still there. My call is to our amazing community, because we do get engaged. We have, like I've said to you, we have all these platforms which have been set up. They've grown astronomically over the last year. We all engage with those platforms. We stress what issues we have. We put forward our complaints. We say what's amazing in our community. We say what's really bad. Let's direct some of that energy that we have within our community towards making effective change to respect the deceased that we have within our community. Because if I think to myself that, my grandfather might be buried there, and what is he going to think about the way his cemetery or the grave that he's in is being treated? It's not nice. It's not nice at all. And I think we owe our deceased that respect that we need to give them after they've gone. So I would say let's get involved. Let's not just put it off for another day and say, yes, I was going to write the letter, but I forgot. Let's do those letters. Let's put this information out and tell other people that may have not watched the show, don't know about what's been happening at the cemetery, and let's get them involved. It's a complete community issue. It's not just left right politics. It's not just segregated to one element of our community. It represents all of us. So I would say let's all get board. Let's all support the campaign, and let's make change happen.
Definitely, Erim. I echo all of the things that you've said. We do need to make a difference and actually take action for sure. Thank you very much for all your involvement. And Meral Hanım, your last words.
Yes, well, to thank and agree with everything Fevzi and Erim has said. You know, we're not pointing the finger or blaming everyone. I mean, when the burials and Viv, who said earlier, it's not just a Turkish Cypriot cemetery. It was English, you know, British English people, Londoners really. It was basically open, but from around the 1970s, obviously as a community, we're an immigrant community, came here when our community obviously got older and ill or died. There were very few options in those days in terms of appropriate cemeteries that were compliant with, people of a Muslim background. Other communities from the South Asian community, had already established their own graveyards. And this one, people started going to this Tottenham Park Cemetery because it was a private cemetery and they would, bury appropriately, pointing in the right direction. My brother died in 1988, very young. And he was buried there because at the time my parents weren't aware of where else they could bury him. And then, of course, years later when my father died and then my mother, of course, they all wanted to be buried there. It's natural. However, now there are different generations now. And the simplest thing is now every local authority the majority of local authorities has to provide appropriate cemeteries for all faiths, people from all different faiths and backgrounds. So, for example, if you Google Enfield, they'll list all the cemeteries that are available, how much they cost. Everything is on the website, even photographs. You Google, Islington, where I live, they have a space in Finchley, Trent Park, really lovely places that they've opened up. The same with other London boroughs as well. Walthamstow, Lewisham, Southwark, they will provide. If not, they will point you to respectable places that are very beautifully looked after. I mean, they are really looked after. They have groundsmen, they have staff working there, have management there. And, your loved one will be in a very secure and pleasant environment, a respectful environment. You'll be treated with respect as a family member, and so will your loved one. Google your borough where you live, and you'll find a whole choice and all the cost as well. And compared to what's being charged now at Tottenham Park Cemetery to be buried in that appalling condition, you'll be pleasantly surprised that many of them are charging far less. And you get a lot more for it. So I think it's time to move on. I think, as somebody said, I think it was Yusuf said, let's boycott it. I think it's about educating people as well. And I think the mosques and imams have got a big, big role in this as well. I know some of them say to me, well, we advise families, but they say, no, I still want, I still want my husband or my, loved one to be buried there. As long as they're giving people the advice and the information, it's up to them what they do. We can't force people, But the campaign is important. I just want to reiterate that. Please write to your MP. Please, you can do that very easily. And I hope Erim will put up where you can get the template. I want to thank the Turkish Cypriot Community Association for their support in this. I also want to thank the Conseil. They've been marvellous as well. So we're getting very good support from all different organisations and umbrella groups as well who are getting behind this now. So I'm very grateful after 3.5 years that I've been involved. Sort of seems at times despondent, depressing, and seems like we've been, getting back to square one. That I think we're cutting through now. We're finally getting somewhere, and I'm very hopeful that we will prevail. We will get the law changed. I'm not going to rest until I do it. I've got colleagues in Parliament, in MPs, and in the House of Lords who are very keen to support this, who have been fantastic supporting me. Giving me sort of legal advice and all the rest of it. So we're not going to stop here. The campaign continues. The more people we get behind us, the stronger we'll be. And I just urge everyone to please get behind this. And I'm sure you're going to keep showing the website, Facebook page, where you can get more information. Thank you very much, and thank you for having me on this programme and for doing this programme. I think it's been absolutely fantastic.
Yes, I mean, it's a pleasure, and obviously we will be sharing and putting out more information, and we can have more programs about this subject just to follow on as to how we're progressing. Lots of thanks there from our viewers and people saying that they're going to be signing the petition and contacting their local MPs. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. We're over 20 minutes over our time. It's been great. Thank you very much for all of you for coming on the programme. And that's it from us from the latest printed press. Good evening. Thank you.
Biliyor musun? Erken rezervasyon başladı. Yazın en renkli fırsatları cyprusparadise.com'da. %40, %50 hatta %60'a varan kaçırılmaz indirimler. Erken rezervasyon yap, uçak bileti fiyatına paket tatili al. Uygun fiyata Kıbrıs tatilinin adresi cyprusparadise.com. Zaman akıp gitmeden acele edin. Bir bakmışsınız yaz gelmiş. Cyprus Paradise. Tatiliniz bizimle güvende.
Kalitenin, güvenin, hızlı teslimatın adresi Ancon Furniture. Ancon Furniture ailesi olarak yeni ürünler ile hizmete devam etmekteyiz. Yeni model koltuk takımlarımız, yatak mekanizmaları bir dokunuş ile açılıp bir dokunuş ile kapanabilmektedir. Bir dokunuş ile açtığımız yatak mekanizmasının yatak çarşafı kullanıma hazır, serili olarak içinden çıkmaktadır. Yıl sonuna kadar herhangi bir koltuk takımı alan her müşterimize akıllı sehpa hediyemizdir. En iyi ürün, en iyi fiyat. Sadece Ancon Furniture'da. Bize uğramadan karar vermeyin. En iyisini biz yapana kadar daha iyisi yok.